Star Wars, Young, Jedi Knights, The Emperor's Plague, Chapter 19. The rocking explosion also caused Raynar to slip and stumble, and thus lose his grip on the delicate munitions he carried. Zeke reacted quickly. He sensed the instant danger and snatched the explosives from the Eldoranian boy's hands, catching and cradling them before Raynar could drop them to the floor. I hope that wasn't an accident from one of our team, Bornanthol said. Raynar looked about, his pale face and texture of fear. Maybe we're under attack. Zeke held the explosive pack carefully, trying to control his trembling. He shook his head. That was Jaina. She's all right, but something's gone wrong. She marched forward. We better find Loey quick and make sure he set the detonators in the plague chamber. Then we can all get off this rock before anything else happens. Raynar swallowed hard and followed him, unless some disaster has already taken place. They dashed around the curving corridors from the munitions chamber back to the central room that stored the plague canisters, pausing only briefly to plant their last of their explosives at strategic points. Pressing his lips together in a grim line, Zeke fixed his thermal detonator transponder so they could set off all the bombs at once. Zeke's Jedi senses tingled. Despite the ordeals of the past, he was no longer entirely reluctant to use the Force, especially in a situation where those skills might mean the difference between life and death. He pulled up short and looked at Raynar. They could both sense danger around the corner. Bornanthol eased past, taking the lead. We can't waste any time. As soon as they turned the corner, though, Bornanthol nearly ran into a lumbering Gamorrean guard, who appeared to be lost. The guard grunted at him in surprise and blinked stupid-looking eyes. Bornanthol snatched the blastered pistol he had taken from the munitions room and shot the guard twice before the pig-like brute could make a move. Raynar gasped. I can't believe how fast you reacted, he said to his father. You protected us all. Bornan looked at the dead Gamorrean side. I used to be a merchant lord. My entire battlefield was in trade negotiations. I was able to pull a faster trick than even the great Lando Calrissian. He drew a long, heavy breath, and then shook his head. At one time I thought I could sell sand to Jawas, but look how I've changed. Raynar put a comforting hand on his father's arm. Maybe it's because you're concerned with more than just a Bornanian fleet this time. Maybe you're thinking about a much broader scale, and your priorities have changed. Thol looked at his son and smiled. That's very perceptive, Raynar. Zeke looked down at the fallen Gamorrean guard and urged him to move again. I admire your reactions, Bornanthol. He tossed the long dark hair behind him. This means we're not alone in the asteroid. Nola Tarkona and the Diversity Alliance must already be here. They hurried along the corridors as rapidly as they and cautiously as they could. They reached the plague chamber without incident, but they did not see Loey when they surreptitiously peered through the transparent steel windows in a collection of plague canisters. Instead, they looked down in astonishment to find Nola Tarkona standing triumphant in the middle of the chamber. She held a control box, the central connector for all the detonators and thermal detonators. Loey had dispersed among the plague cylinders. Her head tail thrashed, making her tattoos ripple. Flashing her pointed teeth and looking entirely confident, Nola disconnected the explosives. Bornanthol watched in cold anger on his face. Raynar stifled a moan of despair. Zeke gritted his teeth. Looks like we need to try something else, if it isn't already too late. Surrounded by hundreds of liters of concentrated death, Nola Tarkona experienced a thrill of long anticipation, the payoff of years of searching. At last she had a weapon to exterminate the human vermin for all time. The alien races could be free. They could work together. They could reclaim their stolen worlds and live with all the glory they were meant to have. As she stood among the transparasteel containers, she breathed the oh-so-clean-smelling air, sterilized and disinfected. But she knew something was terribly wrong. The sealed door had already been opened, and her guards scoured the plague chamber searching for evidence of sabotage. They had shouted in outrage, and they found dozens of incinerators and thermal detonators strung together, planted in strategic points. Nola had moved to the center of the room and found the control box. She could smell Wookiee in the air, and she knew that Lobaka, one of the great traitors of the Diversity Alliance, had been here already. He wanted to destroy the stockpile in the war for the alien freedom. With her rose quartz eyes, she studied the control box now that she had disconnected the sabotage devices. She yanked out the remaining cables before tossing away the useless box. It made a resounding, satisfying clang on the metal floor. Nola glowered down at it, her sensitive head tail twitching. The Twi'leks had an extensive but subtle language that depended on the movements of their head tails. But she had only Diversity Alliance soldiers beside her. None of her own Twi'lek people could understand the thoughts and her emotions. No race could truly comprehend the downtrodden hopelessness the Twi'leks had endured. Centuries of slavery, technological inferiority, hellish environmental conditions, even treachery from their own race. Now that she had control of the Emperor's plague, though, Nola would become a savior of aliens everywhere, and she relished that position. As she glanced at the various liquid solutions, Nola saw other test plagues, hidden hideous viruses targeted at non-human species. Biological weapons Yvette de Curet had developed and tested on those hapless alien prisoners they had found and sealed in small cells. The other plagues certainly had potential as well. The Diversity Alliance could free all non-human races by spreading one kind of plague, but in the aftermath, she was certain to encounter further resistance, struggles against her benevolent rule by various commando groups from different species. She might have to deal with the strongholds that resisted their own liberation, and these biological solutions would give her an edge against the Wookiees, the Calamarians, and other races that might prove troublesome. She had to take samples of these plague organisms as well. With the optical sensors mounted in the stump of her severed head tail, she saw a flash of movement behind the transparisteel windows above. Someone spying on her. She set her sharpened teeth on edge. A part of her knew already who the traitors were. Nola took a deep breath and stifled the anxious twitching of her head tail. She was not worried. She had gotten here in time to secure the plague samples. She had plenty of soldiers with her, all armed with blaster rifles. The little Jedi saboteurs had been foiled in their plan, and Nola would bide her time. They would come with her, to her. Then, with the plague solution, with all the plague solutions she would need, with the human meddlers all dead, she would begin the great work of her life.